What's up, everybody? Timber Builds here, back with how to build the ultimate Pagoda Base build guide part 2. Appreciate everyone sticking around for this one. I know it's taken a long time to get here. Life has been a little crazy, but I appreciate you guys being patient with it, and I had such an overwhelming response from the first video that we had to get the second one done. So here it goes. So we left off from the first video finishing the bounce tower, showing off the outsides a little bit. I did want to mention just a few little tips and tricks that were maybe left out of the first video. Most people seem to be able to get this done pretty well, but there are a few things that I forgot to throw in there or that were suggested to me, specifically my mod wanted me to tell you guys this. And since I can't really redo the whole first video just to make a small change or addition, I can at least tell you here to make some of your lives easier. One, when we were doing this outer area, I believe I did a 1.25 or 1.5 blocks wide here. This just needs to be 2. So you can use the little quarter blocks if you want, or you can use 2 full-size blocks. It doesn't really matter. And that'll help you get this stuff lined up much better. It just doesn't work on the half, and that's something that just in the process of trying to talk through the video didn't come across very well. And then on another note, if you are struggling with getting this stuff lined up absolutely perfect, I know I said perfection is the lowest standard that you can shoot for, which I still believe wholeheartedly. But if you are someone like me that wants these corners dang near as perfect as possible, best way to go about that is to place these first walls that we had talked about in the very, very beginning. Get your floor here lined up as we had talked about, as close as you possibly can. Then instead of building up everything on the inside and the elevator and all that, just build out a set of stairs, get down to this level, and just build out the first couple corners. This way you can automatically check, dang, that's about as perfect as it gets. And then you can kind of move and you can see, okay, this wall, everything's kind of going to be based off this front wall. So then you can kind of come back over to these other sides, make small adjustments, especially as you, again, as we had said, you need a bit of a visual for my first little tip there. These want to be 2 blocks, not 1.5. So just small change, but it does make quite a large difference when you're trying to get this placed properly. And so if you get these out on the right thing, they will line up better. So that is a good way to do that. And then on top of that, get rid of this. There. Yeah, and then your walls line up properly. So I had lined it up better than I had thought I did. I just was kind of rushing through the video in that first one. So appreciate you guys understanding small mistakes like that. This has been like over 2 years now since I built the original version of this base. There's been so many iterations and changes over time that it's a little difficult at times to perfectly recreate it every time, since I've changed the design many times. It keeps going. But if you build out from the bottom down to this level, you can really get a test to see how well of a job you did. And if you're ending up like this, you're good to just keep doing walls. You place a wall, build out, make sure your corners meet. Makes it a little bit easier so you can tell if maybe one side is slightly sticking out there. You just know to adjust this to the left, and then until that lines back up. And it will make the precision of it just a little bit easier. And then the other thing, moving back up to the top, getting onto the actual second part of this base, I had noticed that I had built on the first video, this went out 2, just supposed to go 1. Nothing crazy, small change. So just delete these, move your little your bounce web out just like this, right up to the edge there, and then you are good to go. Simple little fix, little change there. You can see that. I'm not sure why I built it 1 out, but you know, things happen. And then that's your whole goal on this. You're just making these bounce webs to line up correctly, so you bounce onto the last one, bonk your head on the roof, and then you're up top. That all kind of gone over in my first video. So if you haven't watched that yet, I mean, I'm assuming everybody has, but go check that out just to make sure you're lining everything up correctly there. Then we're just going to get going on this upper area. So you just kind of come up, you're going to place a set of stairs. This is essentially just the way this is done. You don't need a block here. This actually, if you do build this, it sometimes will catch you and you'll fall back down, which can be kind of annoying. There's definitely an adjustment phase where you're going to want to mess with how hard this is bouncing you. Sometimes you want to mess with the angle a little bit, but this will get you roughly to the right area, and then you're just kind of messing with that little tiny bit over and over again until it sets up the way you want it to. Then you're just going to build up 4 stairs. Yes, so you're going to build this, and then, sorry for the constant back and forth. So I'm trying to look at some pictures here for references, just so I'm building this as accurately as I can. You're going to build it the same way my base is built. You're going to want a nice little door here. I used mushroom. You could get away with literally anything. Does not matter. These are just some little storage spaces that I had designed in. You can go to the left and right there. Then just get that stuff up. Build one more wall. Fill this in. And the nice thing about this whole base section, or this section of this base, is that this just gets copied to each side. You don't have to build a a bounce elevator, but you are essentially just copying this single side. So again, this build is not going to go over every single little detail. The build would take me hours and hours, and the video would be too long to get every single piece, all the armor dummies, all the things. But I'm going to get you the best formatting set up so then you can kind of take your own creativity and move forward with it from there. So then we're going to come, I think we're going to want one more of these. That looks good. Boom, boom. Does get a little finicky and close here as you're just messing with things. Bear with me as well, as I'm also been playing a lot of Grounded 2 recently, which I hope everyone else has been as well and has been enjoying that. Phenomenal game thus far. Really having a lot of fun. If you haven't checked out some of the live streams, make sure you do that, because we are building a, I think, pretty cool base at the end of the day. Pagoda Base 2.0 is what I'm calling it, but it's a lamp base, but also using some of these off-grid techniques. The nice thing is, as you learn how to do some of this stuff in the first game, as you transition into the second one, these will do very well for you. You will definitely appreciate putting the effort in to learn the precision for the off-grid building system that we have done here. And again, I did have a lot of questions. I'll kind of be going over stuff as I just build here quickly. In the first video, people asked, how do you build this without the handy gnat? I built the first base completely without the handy gnat. You do not need it. It sucks. It's a lot of extra work. You are just kind of building scaffolding up to do different things. I built the inside, the stairs up, the floors, level by level by level, and just slowly filled it out, came to the outside. But then a lot of it is just building mushroom walls and stacking them up and then destroying them. They fall into the water, collect it all up, and rinse and repeat. Not necessarily the most glamorous of ways to build, but it does get the job done, and I can 100% confirm that you can build this without having to have the handy gnat. It does make it exponentially easier, I will say. So don't hesitate to use the handy gnat, but that is for the people that are willing to lose the ability to get achievements, which is the only thing that happens when you go to custom game. Or if you're waiting to build this in New Game Plus, then get to New Game Plus 1 and you get the handy gnat for free. It's automatically unlocked for you there, and so that is another good option. It's definitely a late game base at the end of the day, though, so nothing to rush into. You got lots of time if you're playing through the game. And I like playing through the game and using this sort of as a way to keep the playthrough going. Is instead of just rushing through content, you build a bit of your base, do some content, build a bit of your base, do some content, and I found that to be a very effective way to get 3,000 hours in the game without totally burning myself out, which is very possible. So what you're seeing here, these are just some of the armor dummy showcase areas. Nothing too crazy, just a little frame kind of setup. on each. These go in here. You do run into sort of these funky little issues where these parts kind of meet in the middle, and that is kind of just how the Pagoda Base goes, honestly. Some of these things are funky. I think they add some fun details overall to the whole build. And I think if people are willing to experiment and kind of test these things out, not necessarily just copy the base one-to-one, which I do not care if you copy it one-to-one. That's just something that I have enjoyed, is experimenting and figuring these things out as I go. I'm sure someone will find an interesting design technique to kind of avoid some of this stuff. You could churn some of these things out and do some fun kind of like goofy angle things like this. It doesn't have to be exactly what I built. How I built things does not necessarily mean it's the best way. It's just the way my brain thought of it and went through it. And I have adjusted and changed so much of this over the years that really the possibilities are endless. But do not feel like everything has to be done the way I said it is being shown. Because if I've learned anything from the grounded community, man, they are some of the most creative, crazy people, and they will find ways to make cool things. And so I love the idea. And if you do build this base, whether you build it the same as I build it, or if you potentially kind of change things up a little bit and do your own thing, I'd absolutely love to see how you're building these bases and how it worked out for you. And it's always interesting building this out. There's extra pieces and decor items since I finished building this. There's new things you can do. So you don't necessarily have to kind of stick with exactly how I built the base out. Because I think there's some other options out there that I think could make it very interesting as well. I don't even know how I would build this whole thing out if I was just starting out as well. So that's a kind of an interesting thing to see as people mess with things and change and adjust. We might all end up with different ideas. And if you do, make sure you join the Discord and post it on there. I would love to see how people do different iterations of this stuff and how other people's brains kind of come up with different ideas than what I've come up with. So we're currently sort of building out this front area. Let's get to the correct image. The only thing I would say is, it's not difficult, but it's slightly more difficult or unique about this portion of the base, is that the towers on the corners are a little funky. They essentially, what you're doing is the same concept of what you've done down here. I liked to do it seeing as this is the front side of the base. I utilized the front here since this is where all my images and everything were going to be taken from. Everything was based off of the front piece, and then the corners, specifically meaning you build the two side towers out on this main grid, and then this tower is on this grid. So you get, as you can sort of see here, you get slightly different lineups and stuff, but that is sort of the easiest way to do it. And then for the most part, it's going to look the best as you get going. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way to get it done, though. I just found it's what worked for me very well. But theoretically, they all kind of line up the same. So if you were to start, say, in this corner and then build all the way around on the grids and build those off of each of those grids, or say you take the left side, use the left portion of each grid to build this tower. So once we get onto this side, then you would do the same sort of concept. You'd build your tower based off of this grid. Not sure why this stuff is all here, but it is. So we'll just jump through this real fast and erase it, and I'll be right back. Okay, got that stuff cleaned up, so we are back now. So now we're going to jump in and do this real fast. You can definitely kind of do this in any order that you see fits best. Wouldn't necessarily say it matters. This is all kind of, you could jump on the inside. You can go straight to this outside portion. It is all personal preference at the end of the day. Luckily, you're not breaking the grid as much when you're building the upper portion of this base. Everything is, you've done the clipping, you've done the hard work. This is where the fun details come into place, of course, but I wouldn't necessarily say that the upper portion is as difficult to get started. It is just much more detailed than the bottom portion, but the detail parts, I think, what's the easiest. Don't forget, make sure you utilize the half mushroom walls where you can. Sometimes when you're clipping things together, this is where things can get a little finicky, especially once we get into the roof pieces that meet in these corners. They are finicky. They're not perfect by any means. So don't feel like you are doing something wrong if it's not working or lining up quite the way you would hope. Sorry, I placed these one too high. Bear with me. Again, this has been almost 2 years since I originally built this base, so we are, you're learning with me slightly again. I'm definitely not perfect by any means, and I do make mistakes, so it happens. It happens to the best of us. But man, it is fun getting back into the Grounded 1 building, having some of these extra pieces. Makes me very, very excited for Grounded 2. To get mushroom bricks, get 2.0 bricks. That's going to be really exciting. So this is kind of where some of the fun begins, I would say. These awnings are very interesting and work kind of finicky at times. Depends on how you're building this out order-wise. I can get it to go. We might have to jump to the upper portion to get these to place correctly. Yeah, being a little sticky at the moment. That's okay though. No, is this one? Yeah. Oh, it's this one. Yes. Right, correct. All right, it doesn't want to go at the moment. So we're going to go build this from the inside then. I think that'll make it just a hair easier. At least in my brain, that's going to. So you're going to want a half wall. Then we're going to have to support this. So let's get a couple of roofs placed down. That'll do it. These, oops. Going to go out on the sides here. Yes, then you want a large triangle piece to fill the gap. Easy enough. Then this is where I use a lot of the patterning as well, something you might kind of catch on to as we keep building. Messed a lot with these patterns, that the way the different ash cement patterns kind of function. So you can flip them around and make kind of cool little designs and stuff here and there, which I'm a big fan of. Really like how they look. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up an image real fast to make sure I get this all correct. Let's see, there we go. Okay, there's those things. You don't really need to build anything down here. If you do want to build the little storage spaces, sorry if I'm jumping around too much for some people. All it is this, and then you can store stuff under the ground there if you want. Otherwise, it's just leave it empty. It's really not an important part of the design necessarily, so you can kind of have as much fun or as little fun with that as you want. There's definitely a lot of cool little things that you can do with that. Let's do this one. And we're just going to build our little towers. If you can get the full tower to work there, it's all good. You can clip it as precise as that if you want. Then for the people that enjoyed the exact look of my base, all you're going to do is just place these down. The ash cement windows. That's how you're just going to get those. You can come through. Again, I like sticking with the half pieces. It is not 100% needed to make it work like this. You can do that, or as well, when these things meet. When I built this base, a lot of this stuff had a lot of overlapping pieces. Now that we have vertical half walls, you don't have to quite have as jank of a build as how mine was originally made. For a lack of a better term, the jank was real. Now with the vertical half walls and stuff, you really can kind of fill these pieces in without having to kind of clip things as much. And clipping in this sense just meaning you'd have it like this. So you'd have a piece here. But seeing as like how I like to build it, I like to fill all this in as much as I can. I think it looks nice. It doesn't really matter if this stuff is going all the way into the pagoda. There's no way to see it. There's no way to get in there. So it's not necessarily something you need to concern yourself with too much. Things are, as long as things are turning out the way you'd like, then you're kind of good to go on it. There's a lot of different kind of fun spots that you can hide these pieces in, and I think there's a lot of room for flexibility as we continue to see people build this base out. I think there's limitless potential for where you could kind of take this base in the long run. And I'm not the only person who's experimented. I'm not perfect. I think there's a lot of interesting ways that I don't necessarily think everyone's figured out every design opportunity with every block that's been used in Grounded 1. I think there's some fun things you can do in combinations that haven't necessarily been touched fully yet. So what we've done here is we've created the first little awning space that's from the inside of the base. Then our little sort of turrets so you can see out of the base. These could also be interesting locations where people potentially start utilizing these as places for base defenses. If you're playing survival, whereas this is a survival world, but I do have raids turned off on this, so you don't necessarily get attacked anymore as things were just getting too big and out of hand to continue to defend constantly. But you can definitely get away with having some fun with these, putting acorn turrets, actually defending your bases, and seeing what the potential is as you keep building and messing with things. There's some interesting parts of the base that we're going to start getting to as these things start meeting as well. I'm going to try to build out maybe 2 sides of this so you guys get a good idea, and then it really is just rinse and repeat, which is the beautiful part about it. You don't necessarily have to go absolutely insane building this one out. It's a little bit more simple compared to some of the other things that you had to do with this Pagoda Base build. If you have fully finished the first portion of the build. That I'm just using these currently to sort of help myself get these locations picked properly. And these are just sort of floating. Back when I was building it ages ago, the game, you could place these little triangles, oops, if you wanted. I didn't love that they kind of stuck out. But again, it's not horrible. So if this is something you like to fill in these gaps, you run into these issues where like the crow feather roofs don't like those. So that is why I left them out. I think it's a small detail, so wasn't too worried about it. And then you're going to want the awning. Sorry if I'm scrolling through these things a lot. The locations of everything's changed from Grounded 1 to Grounded 2, so that is also something I am having a wonderful time relearning. But overall, fairly simple. And you just kind of keep messing with these. My experimentation with the awnings was really fun. I think it was a really cool little block they added to the game. Gave a lot of flexibility, gave you something that sort of looks like a window, but isn't at the same time, which is really cool. You don't have windows, but between the different awnings and the way you can kind of mess with them and place them, I think it was a really unique little addition to the game. So definitely a big fan of how they ended up figuring out that. Get this placed properly. Over one, half a block. Yeah, I would love to rebuild the entire thing for everyone, but as you can already see, it's a time-consuming build to replicate the entire thing piece by piece. But definitely worth the effort, I would say, to build the Pagoda Base. I think it just was such a fun base to build, has a lot of opportunity. The inside is so flexible. I think was one of the amazing parts about it, is that you're not stuck with just a flat build. There's some interesting spaces. It's big enough that you can really fill it with anything and everything in the game. There's enough space that some of the other base locations just don't have quite enough space. Go in your home now. We do that real quick. There we go. A lot of the time, some of this stuff you need to, especially when you're clipping, that's another thing I will mention. When you're clipping blocks like this from one side to another, it's definitely a good idea to look at it from different angles. It does if something's not placing the way you want it to, or not working quite the way you want it to, the best way to mess with it is try placing it from a different angle. All right, let's make it daytime so it's easier to see. Okay, that makes that easier. And luckily, once you get past this sort of lower portion, if you're not building with the handy gnat, I know it looks like I'm just breezing through this and like I'm having no issues whatsoever, but again, I did build this fully in survival before the handy gnat was even a thing. So it is possible. I fell into the water a lot. Like, a lot. Many deaths happened, but you know, I think it all turned out for the better. Turned out very good. Okay, so this gets us mostly through the top portion. This piece. That needs to be one more. That looked correct. Sorry, every time I pan out real fast, I'm just trying to double check an image. I want to get you guys this base as close to possible, as accurate. There's always little things that are adjusted as I'm doing these build guides and stuff, but for the most part, I try to make it as accurate as I possibly can with the information that I have. But unfortunately, I can't have 2 sessions of Grounded open and still function without trying to blow my computer up with this base. So you kind of got to just work with what you got. This is coming together. Then the roof system or ceiling for this, just on this level. And you can just bring this all the way back, actually. Love this feature. Drag and drop just makes life so easy. But yeah, that's the majority of this first section. From here, a lot of what you're doing is just kind of messing with the lighting and stuff. You don't necessarily have to use the extra pieces that I've used. For me, it was just lots of sap sconces, and you can kind of just place them where you think pieces need to be highlighted. I really liked using these like window pieces. It was a cool little addition. Adds a lot of depth, I think, which is one of the things I really liked about this as well. And just layering pieces on, because now it's once you build the kind of the starting point here, you have just so much freedom with this space to just kind of mess with things. Since you got all your armor dummies and weapons sitting up here, again, you can totally change this. You have a lot of room back here as well to do some of this. You don't necessarily have to make these exactly the same thickness, or you can pull them forward or backwards. You could add in some different shapes. I've seen some people use like the curved blocks and stuff. You could definitely spice this up quite a bit. But for the sake of simplicity, I just like keeping it as we built it. Okay, so when you got the inside like this is where I messed with a lot of the patterning, especially with the ash cement blocks. You want to be careful which side you're using. As you saw, like here, if you rotate these, you notice how there's a way thicker side. That's something to keep in mind when you're placing these, especially when you're doing like quarter blocks and the vertical blocks. It's really easy to start looking at it and wondering why things aren't symmetrical and exactly matching. But that is a big part of that, is just making sure you have things rotated to match exactly. Can be a bit of a pain at times if you're not used to using those blocks. And hence the reason I use ash cement and mushroom in this specifically so much is because this getting the blocks up to the top of this base can be kind of a nightmare, honestly. It's not easy. It's a process to get those materials specifically up here. So mushroom makes life easy. So don't be afraid. Utilize the mushroom when you can. It's just makes life so much easier. That's why I find it to be my favorite. Then we do want that to be a half block, or else you'll bonk your head and won't be able to get up. And then you don't necessarily have to use the same half blocks, but this is how I built it. So we're just gonna match as well as we can. And want to get an archway. And these are some of the areas where I think you probably have more freedom and flexibility than just copying exactly what I've done. There really is just limitless opportunity. Okay, well, those don't want to flip, but that's fine. Doesn't really matter. Then we're going to go 2 walls out. Yep. You get these. This is sort of a fun little piece that I had figured out as well. I do prefer the half blocks when we're doing this portion specifically because of the way some of these other walls are built. Not 100% necessary, but you will see as you get into these corners, that's where things are going to start causing you some trouble. So using the half walls specifically in these types of areas where you're going to have now, as we get to the next walls, you will that's where you're going to start running into a few of the issues where I find half walls have less of a frustrating mechanic, if that makes sense. They tend not to be as finicky as I find the full walls. Of course, the full walls are working. Feel free, go ahead and use those because they are just less blocks to mess with. Get this placed, get one of these. Those. And you have your little balcony space. Pretty simple. Actually, these are meant to be double. My one off, is that what I'm doing? Centered, yes, I think so. Let's just double check. I think what I had done was this. Let me just confirm this is how it goes. We might have to make some adjustments as we continue to build this out as well. As the corners come together, you really start to see why things were built the way they were. But yes, there was 2 stairs here. Not that that is critical to the mission necessarily, but we're going for replicating this base as best as possible, so we might as well. Show you guys the best way I can do it. That's how I'm going to do it. And it's always a bit of a refresher for me as well as I get back into building with this space specifically. Kind of start remembering how it was put together in the beginning once you get going, but my memory fades. Yes, that looks more correct. Okay. So we have that. We got these. We just need to move this over. Another beautiful part is we now have quarter roof pieces as well from these updates, so you have a little bit more flexibility in this as you get going, which is very necessary at times. Were some of the biggest pieces that I was missing when I originally built this base. Life would have been much, much, much easier with those specific pieces. So close, but so far. Okay. That might be slightly off. Yeah, we'll adjust that as we go. This is a roof piece that goes like this, yeah. Okay, so you're essentially completed on this level. You've got this going around, you've got these. Of course, these will kind of come together as we build another side. We build out that front area, I think is the way to go. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything too crazy. I definitely have a lot of like mini details, like stuff like this that I will probably overlook for you, unfortunately. There are also places where you can fill in some of these gaps and stuff. These things bug you. A lot of my bases do that. Fill in the holes just because I didn't like seeing through the bottom of the stairs for some reason. Doesn't affect everything. These walls were just like this. And luckily you can build this out however you see fit. As all I did was put shelves in here and made it functional-esque. Originally, these were going to be wine barrel storage areas, but it didn't necessarily pan out to be fully complete. We just filled them up here and there. Fill in these gaps, or if you want, you can just cover that up like that. Want to fill in your last little gap here with the valley roof piece. If you're OCD like I am. Oops. And that's where we want quarter block pieces so we don't bonk our heads. Yeah, so then you come up, you're good to go. We got all this built. The chandeliers, honestly, the newer chandeliers, I think are probably just better at this point. I think these would just look nicer to just stick with these. If you want to build the chandeliers the way I built them, you're psychotic, and I love it because I was the same. These were my custom chandeliers when I was building the base, and they're just placed all over. They take way more effort to build than these, so... And I think the toenail ones actually look pretty epic, so they look very nice. And all the armor dummies are just placed in the center-ish. Some of them like this. I kind of just did the best fit. This is where I think some people could definitely improve upon my designs, as I am not perfect. And over the years, I think I got tired of building in here. So I eventually stopped worrying about the smaller things. If those things bug you, go crazy. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. I think there's some really cool things you can do with those portions of the base as well. They're very cool. And then all I had was some backlighting like this. Get one more for the effect. I do miss the handy gnat and grounded too, man. This is wonderful. Makes life so quick and easy to build. Okay, so that's those portions. The top piece here is an interesting battle. I know these things don't matter, but when you see things, you just go for it, I guess. Okay. This is where we then take more roof pieces. Get them placed. Then you get your next set of roofs. Well, you definitely do not need to use roof pieces for this portion, but I think for consistency's sake, that is what I did. Just like that. Okay, so that's one side essentially built. We will, you'll see some things. I'll make some adjustments as we push on to the other side to make sure everything is as accurate as possible. I also believe. Did I use the big ones? Oh, jeez. Oh, no. Small change, I'm just noticing. I forgot. I changed these roofs to the large roofs, I believe, when those were added. Got feather peaked there. Big feather peaked. There we go. That's the one. So it should line up with this mushroom brick piece. That looks much better. Okay, and then the only other thing in this little spot is you're going to do like this, and this is where things are going to start meeting in these corners. So be ready. Now, as you can see, we're essentially going to rebuild what we built here. So we're not literally rebuilding a elevator, but the idea, the way you want to think about it is that you're rebuilding the elevator. So you want to get up, make sure you're all centered. I think that looks good to me. And you're just kind of copying this exactly as it is. So in, at least for consistency's sake, that's the way I like to do it. I think you could have some fun here as well. You don't have to necessarily do this exactly. These are things, for me, it's the symmetry. Love the symmetry of it. And just like that. We need to go one more up. There you go. Yep. Close, but no cigar. One more. Ah, that's what I did. So instead of placing this from the top, I was one down. Let's just do this. Not sure how these are supporting themselves, but they are. build it as accurately as I can for you. Making sure you get these things dialed in as best as you can is very much worth the effort. These are the places where you will decide that you hate this whole base if you don't take your time. And we're still half a block high, right? I think we are. Yeah. And luckily with mushroom brick, you really don't have to quite worry about which block you're using, since they visually all look the same. They'll kind of connect nicely. Go away. Okay. And then once these things start getting supported, you can just delete these. Or you could build out elevators from every side. You could make adjustments. You could do this, do a design, make these like supports of some kind. I have some kind of flying buttress type things on my build, so that's definitely a cool design option if you were interested in switching things up. I think you could have a lot of fun with more flying buttress designs and stuff on this one. I think the detail of this base is what really brings it to life, so don't be afraid to do more. Go big. And yeah, see? Once you get them supported up on the top portion, I just go back and delete this. And then this is where the bug museum is if you watch the first video and the base tours that I've done. These become less critical at this point. Getting this all exactly right. But it's just the same thing. Build the stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4. The lining up of all of this stuff just all works out. If you set up the bottom based on the first video, you will be very happy with yourself, and you won't want to cry. You did a good job in the beginning. But life can get a little difficult at times as well if you didn't take your time on the first portions. From the most part, it did sound like people did a good job and weren't struggling too bad. But I would not call this base just simple and easy at at any point. Some portions are maybe easier than others to build, but overall it's fairly difficult in general to just build this base. So have grace with yourself. Don't feel like everything has to be perfect right off the bat. Be afraid to change things as you notice them maybe not working out the way you'd like. But the more time you take, the better off you are. And hopefully you're not too infuriated with me in building this base. Turning the volume off of my notifications. Okay, make sure that's right. At this point, you really could just watch the first portion again, but we'll just build it out so everyone's got it. I think it's nice seeing the pieces come together and how you kind of would maybe make adjustments as we start running into some of these corner pieces that can cause problems. Doesn't mean they will, but they can. Again, making sure you have these rotated properly makes a big difference in consistency throughout this. And this is where you're going to start noticing some of the, I wouldn't necessarily call them frustrating portions of the space, but it's going to get a little bit more difficult to place each block, just because now you're going to start competing, as you probably noticed with the first base, you're going to start competing with the other grids that you've now used. And so it can be a little finicky at times. 2, 3. You can kind of fill these spots in however you see fit. A lot of these I just slowly started messing with them as I went. Okay. And you also kind of have to get creative at this point as well in the way you're filling these voids and corners. Now, it does work a little bit better because we have vertical half walls and stuff, but as you can see, some of these things just aren't going to line up perfectly. I don't necessarily think doing a better job on the bottom makes these portions necessarily easier by any means. Helps a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have any issues whatsoever. And for me, a lot of filling in this stuff was trying to find a consistent way to have this stuff overlap. So like you sort of create your own pattern within the pattern. It's a little hard to tell what I'm doing here, but if you care, you care. If you don't, you know, you don't. You can kind of go as crazy or as not as you want here. You could fill these in with triangle pieces. You could fill in like whatever you want to do. Luckily, these are really easy to interact with, so you don't have to go too insane. But I just tried to keep it as replicatable as possible, so that's what I'm missing. You can see sort of creating this diamond shape in these corners is the main goal at this moment. And this is where you can kind of come back out to the front now. Luckily, once you have this first side done and completed, now you can sort of utilize these grids that we've already made. So you've done it once, now you're just replicating it over and over again. So I think this is where it tends to get a little easier. There'll be some portions that you might struggle with, but for the most part, I think it gets, the more you build, the easier it gets as you keep going. You always have something to sort of pop back to and go, okay, that's what I did there. Or if things are feeling off, it's a lot easier to just sort of come back and get them fixed. And like here, we're like one block too far out. See, we still have the supporting glitch in the game, where the game thinks it's supporting things, and it's not. Then a curved. Window curved wall, right? I guess ash cement curved, and then the windows. I think as you start adding more and more detail to this, the upper portion of the base, the whole thing starts to look exponentially better as well. Because the upper portion, I think you have more creative freedom than the lower, in my experience at least. Just gonna place your little half walls. And you'll start to understand where some of the slightly more trickier pieces come into play now as we get into these corners. That goes all over one, of course. We're still one off. Wait. Ah. There we go. I believe that's more accurate. Delete those, get them out of the way. Sorry if you're having to repeat that because I was moving a little too quick for myself. This is where sort of taking your time, not rushing too much, can be very impactful. Even that's not quite right. They're all meant to be 1 over. Really, really easy to make these little mistakes and getting all this stuff lined up. Now, if you're not doing triangle blocks like I am just to make a pattern that doesn't necessarily make any difference to the build itself, then probably a little easier because you're not trying to perfectly match this stuff the way I am. Okay, let's make it day. Be right back. Hopefully at this point, this is all making sense and is working for people that are trying to recreate this. Not too many struggles quite yet. And if you are having just a horrible time doing this, feel free to reach out on Discord. The link will be down below. There's myself and Velocity. Velocity has been incredibly helpful building these bases. He has essentially become my the mod for the channel, but he's also gone out and probably rebuilt this base 30, 40, 50 times. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you how many times, but he's helped people in the community. And so there's a lot of random knowledge around getting this base built that you can hopefully utilize and reach out to us. We also have pictures and images of the entire thing in our build inspiration section of the Discord. And as you build the base out, I would absolutely love to see how it turned out, if what you struggled with, what you changed and made better, and tell me that it's better than what I did, because I want to know. I want to see it. Makes me excited to see how people are doing different things with the build, not necessarily just using my ideas solely, because I think you guys are all pretty dang creative. If I've noticed anything from everyone in the grounded community, there's a lot of creativity out there. Although I'm the one making this video, I think everyone in this community has a lot of interesting ideas to add. And maybe how I could do things differently, how designs can change. A lot of different interesting ways to combine things and make this. Build that roof out a little bit. And then, let's see, want window walls. And so this is where you can kind of make your own decision. At some point, this comes full circle around. In my base, I specifically decided to use this face as the piece to build here and here for these towers. Just for the video's sake, it doesn't really make any difference specifically. Something is going to be slightly off on this at some point, kind of no matter how you build these towers, because they're not really meant to be utilized in this way by, for lack of a better way to describe how this works. Something's going to be a little off, something's going to be a little funky. All of them. And this is where maybe other people come up with ideas that maybe are a little bit better than what I had done originally. Not that it doesn't work, but it's not a perfect system by any means. But realistically, when you're looking at it, you can kind of tell things are slightly off. We could probably move this piece as well. So that looks correct. Typically, one side of this is always going to be just slightly off, is from my experience. Oops. You can get it maybe a little more centered if you do it like this. Toss a half wall in here instead, potentially. Oops. And that is why specifically I built the two front pieces of the base on the same grid, just so everything lined up a little bit better. But you can also move these over a half block. This doesn't really matter how you build these ones out. Some part of this is going to clip in from the other wall, as you can see on this side. It's not going to work 100% because the shapes and sizes are slightly different. But this does line up maybe minutely better. As long as you're okay with having some silly blocks. Get your big feather roof. Put it in the right spot, hopefully. Or not. It's being rude, grounded. Being rude. This is also where you need these to sort of fill in the gaps. And you want to make sure you're building on the correct grids here, because it's really easy to start building out on your other one and not really notice it right off the bat. Especially when you're kind of getting into these tight quarters. It becomes very, very easy to kind of start getting yourself off by a block or two. Very, very easy. And luckily, with the vertical half walls and stuff, and the quarter blocks, you can just sort of fill these things in, and everything kind of meets up nicely. You don't necessarily have to worry about it too much, except this is supposed to be 1 over, I believe. Yeah. And then I utilized the triangle blocks here, and for a small extra piece of detail, we also have pillars in this corner, just like that. Nothing crazy, but that is that's how I built it, at least. We'll hold off on that piece as we keep building. Do a quick glance, make sure this all looks correct, or as close as it can. Okay, we can build these roof pieces out. This is where precision is key. Take your time. You get all the pieces to match the other sides that you've already built. Make sure you go back and you check often. It's very, very easy to just be one block off or just have little tiny things think the first time I built the base, I built it all one complete block too high and could not for the life of me for a while figure out what I had done wrong. And it was just one little block off. Doesn't take much. And then we need 2 more of those to fill in here. Oh no. All right. No. Oh wait, it's the curved ones. That's why. You don't know these blocks very well. They do change. It's part of the... What makes these really interesting is that they sort of, depending on how you rotate some of them, so they have pretty interesting interactions as you start to learn how they function differently as you twist the other types of blocks. The corner ones don't necessarily, but these specifically, you can sort of see. They change this one. No, this one? Yeah. You can kind of, there's a lot of, they're all the same but different blocks. So you got to kind of mess with different iterations of each kind. As you rotate them around, you see how that becomes a corner piece. This is easier to see. It goes from a corner to that, so you can kind of fill in some of these blocks and layer them really interestingly. Again, not sure why this big peaked roof does not want to place in the proper location. Might just be some of these. And I do talk about in my top 10 tips to build better in grounded how order of operations really matters. I think that's probably one of the more important things to remember when you get to this upper portion of the build. The lower portion, maybe not as mission critical. I don't feel like I had as many issues with it. Order is very important. For some reason, the game is quite okay with letting you place certain blocks with no issues, and then absolutely will not let you do other ones. So you can kind of get away with that. If you keep messing with that for ages, which we don't really have time to do in a full video, this stuff will pan out and work over time. You just kind of have to mess with the order that you're placing things in. Being stubborn because it really wants to be on the other grid at the moment. So it's a lot of it's looking at different angles. Go from the inside or the outside. Doesn't mean it's going to be happy with you, but eventually it'll let you place it. You kind of have to have patience with them. Don't necessarily get too discouraged too fast. I think the perfect example is when I was building these sections of the base. This would just one side. Actually, it might have happened during the video with see-through of the base, the tour. Just wouldn't place for the life of me. I could not figure out why. It just would not let me place this last feather roof. And then, I don't know, 6 months later, the game said, fine. He's given us enough. We can, we'll let him do it. Let these go out a little bit more, don't they? One more. Double check I'm making this right. It goes 1, 2. I think this is what is. These ones are just one piece off. So I went like this to keep everything sort of lined up. Oops. Wrong piece. Yes, this is where the struggle came from. Because then you do a little bit of fancy work here to get these placed on. There we go. Luckily, things move so easily that if you're a block or two off, it is very simple to just make quick adjustments like this. And then that is that. Good to go. These placed. Then we want to get this built. It's a half block over, like so. Same height though. Yeah. And you can get away with building these kind of however you specifically want. Does not have to be in this exact order to be correct. Sort of find as you build more and more, you kind of find your own way to build these specific little details. But yeah, you're just building it out one piece at a time. Someday this will let me place it. Sure why it's being stubborn today, but interesting. And that's also where if the peaked roofs aren't working for you, you can always just come in and throw these in. They're almost exactly the same. They're just a tiny bit smaller. There's a lot of overlap and weird stuff that happens on the upper part of the base that most of you probably have never necessarily noticed. Because realistically, you're never looking at those sides of the base. And as I said in the first video, perfection is the lowest standard that you can strive for. And I was one off here. There's enough depth and layering that's why I keep saying, take it a little slow. Don't feel like it has to be done in an hour. Oftentimes, you're just making your own life harder by trying to rush through this. You can fill those gaps in if you want. Don't need to, though. I sort of like seeing the extra detail and stuff as we add more and more pieces to this. And hopefully we'll be able to like speed this up a little bit and edit the editing process as well. You guys aren't stuck watching 2 hours of videos, but there is a reason I hesitated on making part 2, because it's just a slightly more complicated build than the first. Just is. First one, there's a lot more drag and drop ability where the setup takes time, but the rest of it is honestly pretty simple. This one is just crazy detailing. So it can be slightly more complicated if you're not as versed as I am in doing this over and over again. There also is on the Pagoda Base tours, there is some speed build sections of this. If you want to see me build those, you can go through those base tours and get a good idea of how this is built as well. But yeah, we're getting close here. Just a little more. What's this? 3 over. Then we'll get the bottom. Oop. Right, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, seems all right. Building in pieces is also something that I find to be very helpful here, so you can not trying to rush too far ahead with a single part of the build, kind of building it out in each section really quick before fully committing to a whole side or anything, or jumping to another portion of it, is where it can get pretty complicated. You don't kind of give yourself the chance to check and make sure you did it properly. No, I probably sound like a bit of a broken record in that sense, but I want to make sure people aren't too frustrated at times building this base. Although I've had some pretty funny messages of people rage quitting, so it's also good entertainment value. There we go. Get the floor in. Then we'll do a gap. This is also, if you can tell why I'm sort of jumping from the inside to the outside, is there's certain pieces of each section that I would say are made slightly easier to build from the inside versus the outside. And if you have like key patterning like what we're working with here, you can make your life quite a bit easier. This is also where you can use half blocks. If you don't like those things sticking through, sometimes they just don't really work. They're supposed to when you put the floor over that, get rid of that, but if you use a half wall, you're good to go. Okay, and what? 1 more over. You can see that's why some of the stuff overlaps a little bit more and doesn't. So close, so close. Bear with me, y'all. And I know we have different roofs there, but things you have to mess with a little bit as you do your own portion of this build. Okay, that is now out of the way. We're good there. Let's get the inside of this one cleaned up just a tad. And we'll show off the last little part up top, and you'll be good to go. This again is where the order of operations specifically, these corners are a hassle. They can be very frustrating to place properly. So don't try not to get too angry with the whole thing, but as you get used to it, things will work out a little bit better. I think these are half triangles, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. We'll run inside in a second to double check those things. And this is where the quarter pieces became a godsend. You just couldn't fill these holes in sometimes. But with the quarter pieces, you can. Beautiful. Looking good. Get our last set of stairs in. And this is the gallery area for anyone who's curious. This is just where all the pictures and frames and stuff I used went. I really liked showing off how all the artwork and stuff. It was a really cool addition to the game. Especially because they allowed players to submit things and be a part of that, which is really cool. All right. Then come up here. Get these last set of stairs down. You just need some type of support there. We can delete that in a little. Vertical walls. Totally double check. This kind of depends on how you want to do it. If you don't want to place the picture frames here, you don't really have to build out off the walls. But it's not going to let you place on these walls, so you are going to want to do some type of little wall structure of something. You could also do it directly aligned. As long as your things are lined up properly, this works really well as well. I believe I just did like this to make it easy. You just fill in all these gaps. Enough, except these are supposed to be some arches. Cover this area. I just like the arches because it made it so it was easier to walk around. That was all. Not mission critical by any means. And this is where you can start getting real weird with it. This is all sort of personal preference. I did some fun stuff like this. This is where it's kind of like your creativity and imagination can sort of whatever is best fit, I think. Kind of got to find your own way that you personally like to fill in some of these gaps. Did a lot of overlapping in these corners like this, and then just kind of as you fill these in, just do some fun little stuff. Get a little weird, but you have to make sure you're lining things up properly as well. This isn't quite how I had done it. Actually, mine were like this. I kind of filled in the corners like that. But all of this was corner pieces like this, or quarter pieces like this, so you could get away with more like of a simple corner fill like that. And then in some of these areas, all I did was in managed. I also have ribs on mine, which this is also where you kind of want to make some adjustments in the roofing. So if you have to slide things over one piece, slide it over, use a think that's partially why this is a quarter piece. It wasn't in the game originally, so I think I used the full pieces in those corners. But I find that now that you have the quarter pieces, trying to copy exactly what I had previously done will just kind of leave you with a mess that I don't think most people probably want to deal with. And if you don't like the peaked roof, you can pretty simply just cover this whole section as well. There's a lot of little design options that you could utilize to do this. Fill in the gaps, use the triangles. I'll leave it there though, so we don't spend too much time, and we will go to sleep once again. And hopefully this is all making sense. It's not too quick and crazy, but I didn't want to overwhelm too much, and the video is already getting quite long. This upper pit portion is just, it's a bit complicated, honestly. A lot of little design details that are in here that are easy to miss. Yeah, then shouldn't need this anymore. Oops. Oops, when you delete the right thing. Okay, then we just gotta get up to the last pictures. Second. This is just where you kind of bring it all together, you know? Stuck. Probably won't build out the entire lantern itself, as it's pretty self-explanatory, but I will get some of it done for you guys. Won't just leave you totally hanging. Yep, that's all correct. And if you are trying to build the cool like lighting lantern type pieces I've done, you're just gonna go like this. You're gonna want a half floor, so you can build up behind this as well, and then you're just filling this out essentially. Nothing too crazy there. You're just trying to create the correct depth here. It's not really anything too special. My designs even changed a lot. This is still sort of built out as a zipline sort of thing for my base, which is pretty unnecessary if you want. Originally, what happened here is this just went up, and then there was a bounce web tower that just shot you all the way to the top. And then where these floors are, there's a little small section for return zip lines, as I found. I kind of preferred to have a return area and a leaving area. That way you don't have to go up zip lines constantly. It's kind of a slightly annoying feature is if you leave all your zip lines at the very top, then to get back to your base, you're taking zip lines up, whereas I was building more towers in other areas and using this lower section as a way to get back quicker. So you don't have to waste quite as much time. But once you get telepodies, none of that really even matters. So that was completely changing as I was building this base out as well. Sort of built it out really cool and then was like, oh, well, now none of that really matters, because I don't need zip lines anymore. Although they are useful still. They're not worthless, but they're not as good as maybe they once were. At least once you get into New Game Plus, which is not something everyone's doing, I know, so. Then all you're doing is putting lights on the back of these walls. And you can do whatever colors, what other shapes, sizes, designs that make you happy. This is just sort of the way I had originally done it, and I have seen some other people do it and honestly make cooler things than I did. So I would not feel like mine's the only way to do it. And if you're exactly copying me, of course, where are the columns? These you just kind of place up. Corner areas like so. These are actually one higher. That fits properly. You can actually place your mushroom there without it causing problems. Go in the center. Half floor it is. I believe I actually had made these 2 out, but or a full block, if that makes sense. More like this, so the zip lines could actually sit on it properly. Sorry, this. Okay. Moving too fast. Yeah, so that's just how those go. Just eating them in the corners is all. Oops. I felt the higher you go up, it becomes slightly more difficult as you're going to get these things to line up perfectly. And then all it is just copy this stuff out now that you've done sort of the harder part of the layout. And then you just bring your half wall in over here, or half floor. Excuse me. This is also where I did a little fun with it. As we were making these slightly different for because at one point we were making our own little teleporter hub. So I added an extra layer to this part of the roof just to add in that extra little detail. So I found it was a little bit of a struggle getting this to fit in correctly. Yeah, that's just right there. Rinse and repeat. We did have these meet in the corner collection. Okay. Build those in. Kind of. I had built them out, but honestly, I think this looks a little better at the end of the day. These are where it can be really finicky to get these kind of last pieces to fit in here the way you'd imagine. So you can go like that and then fill these in as well. That's your personal preference. Yeah, you get some of the cool little details in those cornerings like that. I think the last thing that we really want to talk about, let's just make sure this all looks correct before I shut her down and call it. So yeah, all it was is you're just placing a bunch of frame pieces and you just go nuts. Boom, 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 boom. They're on this wall, they're on these walls, they're on these walls. These details are all in here and kind of funky, but they're on the inner walls, so it's not too mission critical. You can fill in all the gaps. You're just rinsing, repeating these portions. as well. Those are built out as is. The upper portion is sort of a mirror image. Same thing, you're going to drop everything back one. You're going to continue your mushroom columns up 3 high. We had built that side out properly, that would be easier. And you're just filling in the gaps like so. Oops, well, not happy about that. That's okay. And these are just sort of the inverse. And then you just got to build this out till it's actually properly supported. Build that out to there. These last couple roofs on. Of course, that didn't place in the right spot. Goodness gracious. Forgot how fast I used to build in the first grounded. They were in the right spot. This is where I just kept adding in little details, and you can kind of go as big or as small as you want. These were sitting out one proud, but I don't have it all quite structured properly yet. That also looks kind of nice. I don't know. It's all personal preference on these parts. You can add as many details or as few details as you like. I think I had these out proud one piece, but this also looks good. All right, so then you can erase that. And again, it's the same exact concept as the lower portion. For this lighting piece, you just got to get a half block. And then you're just creating a wall behind it, so it has something to reflect that extra light off of. And these parts are where there's just a lot of freedom and flexibility in once you get to these kind of detail pieces. You got the main idea for the structure and everything. At this point, you don't necessarily have to worry about the exact design details. You can have as much fun or make it as specific as it was to mine, if that's what floats your boat. Yeah, and then I just use white lighting, blue lighting, red lighting, kind of swapped them in and out on each side, and then it's just telepodies at this point placed in these areas. It's nothing too insane. I think I may have swapped these, but I kind of like the ash cement on top. My base kind of caps this top area better, whereas the mushroom brick was what I had used on the original build. And this gets the job done quite well, actually. It's less contrast than the mushroom sticking out weirdly there. But yeah, I think that's those are the pieces. Hopefully I didn't kind of overlook too much or anything. I think you've kind of got, the last piece, the most important, the piece de resistance. You've kind of done the easy work now. You've worked in the grids, we've messed with them and stuff. The one thing that I hadn't showed is I have a bridge on my base. This is probably the absolute hardest part of this whole thing. I kind of got lucky when I was doing it. Luckily, I have some techniques that I think will help you get the bridge built specifically, as I'm not going to build the whole thing in this video. But as you go through the Pagoda Base tour specifically, you can see that on this section, there is a little bridge. And the details don't really matter. They're not super important. The hard part is if you want the walls to line up correctly to where you have a bridge with flat, regular pieces going this way over to here, so you can always get over to the upper yard. That's what I liked it for. Everything's going to be on an angle if you build it out this way. So you're kind of stuck doing this weird thing, and then you're using angled walls, and it just wasn't a great fit. in my opinion. I was not a huge fan of how it had turned out, so I built it on its own grid. I honestly got really lucky the way it worked out. I'll just be honest with you. It's difficult, but the great thing is that you can just use scaffolding to get these right. So all you have to do is, instead of one of these little kind of hut things, whatever you want to call the little towers on the side, which I think could be designed better and more interesting too, you really just have to come in with scaffolding. It's probably the number one tip to building off-grid if you've never really done it. The Pagoda Base sort of makes life easier in some ways just because of the way you get to utilize the walls to line things up, whereas if you don't have walls and you don't have these pieces, it can make life quite a bit harder. And naturally, it's going to be a little finicky with me today. You can also just kind of go like this. Your goal here just being get the height right. Nice thing is with these, you can just sit here and mess with them. Sometimes you change the axis just a hair, it will be happier for some reason. So we're still not quite right. Luckily, these things are not that difficult to just mess with. You can kind of just copy them and move them, and they will just give a little reference, I guess is the way I like to use them. So you can see here, not super important. You're just trying to get the height as close to possible. Like, that looks like it should be right. This is exactly how mine looks. It is just barely proud of that. Now, the only thing you're going to want to do now, the way I like to think of these is first you get one axis placed, then you're going to get another axis moved and another axis moved. So you've got X, Y, and Z axes. And so we have the height correct now. So now we're going to want the rotation proper, which at this point we're real close. You're really just trying to get it lined up almost with this support piece of the pagoda. Then you've got this. Oops. And then now you can see, okay, now we have the rotation right. We have that axis right. We have the height pretty much correct. But now we got to get the rest of it. So you just want to make sure you disable the snap to grid again. And we are just... I find also that for some reason, depending on what you're looking at, so if you're looking at the pagoda, the height will let you rotate or adjust the height easier. If you're looking at your blocks, it kind of gets all weird. So you want to not be looking at your structure. You want to be looking at the pagoda base specifically. So if you have to delete some of these walls and like pull them back, that might make life a little easier. And then from there, now you've got everything done. All you're going to do, now, of course, you can kind of pull these out and be like, I don't like the angle, rotate a little more. And you're just going to move, copy and paste these pieces over and over again, and that's it. Now you get to build whatever bridge. I mean, my design, you can check out my design through my base tours that's changed drastically. Originally, it was just this. It was just a copy and paste of this over and over again, and then I added some different designs to it, had some more fun with it. But this is where your creativity can kind of come through and you can have more fun with it, because at the end of the day, you're just making a flat bridge. It doesn't have to be a specific design. It's going to let you clip in because we're on another grid. So it's going to allow you to just the freedom to do kind of whatever you want with it. Then you can build fun roofs. The roofs, again, will let you kind of come in. I think I had mine, the stairs step down when you got out to the edge. Not really necessary, but it looks kind of cool. Although at the same time, the flat is probably a little more convenient. So you can do this and you can kind of just go nuts with it. Place some statues as well, but yeah, everything just kind of fits in, and then you can use the quarter blocks like this just to kind of fill in the last little gaps on these sides, and then you've got a near perfect little bridge across. And that's the great thing, is you could build this bridge, you could make it go down, you could make it a suspension bridge, you could do a lot of kind of insane, goofy things with it. It does not have to be a one-to-one of what I built on my bases as well, although it does look nice. I probably changed the design 6 or 7 times on that bridge, so it's, hello. What a perfect way to end it. Your little crow friend coming through, just hanging out for the day. He does not break the base. I had a lot of people ask that as well. He has no effect. The only thing is you can't walk here while he's sitting there. So that's it. Doesn't break the game, doesn't ruin anything. Every once in a while you're in the handy gnat mode, if you go down, he'll like glitch you through the base, which is kind of cool. So you can see like what's underneath it, but he's not going to do it this time probably. Sometimes you can see it and it looks like a kaleidoscope if you have all the same lighting that I have on this upper area. But yeah, simply put, that's wasn't simple at all, but that is part 2. That's everything built out. You got all the little pieces. Of course, there's little things. Feel free to leave a comment if you have other questions. I could do some like mini series of these, I guess, if there's specific portions, or I could show people in the Discord as well. If there's parts you're struggling with. But overall, I mean, that is the gist of it. From there, you have a good shell of a base that you can kind of experiment with, fill it up as you like. You can watch my tours to kind of see more specifically how I filled the spaces up. You have a rough idea, of course. The Discord as well. If you are not a part of our Discord, there is a build inspiration page there where I have the Pagoda Base, and there's 1,000 photos, hundreds and hundreds of photos of the Pagoda Base, and it's a walkthrough of the entire thing. And I know a couple people that have built the entire base specifically from those pictures with no guide whatsoever, so they are very thorough. If you want more of the specific details of how this base looks, they're every angle, every portion. They asked a question about every single piece of the base, and there are pictures for every single piece of the base. So if you really want to copy all the details exactly, I'm going to suggest that you join the Discord and look at those images, and you can really create a kind of a one-to-one that way, where this is more meant to get the shell done, the basic details, the sizes, the stairs, the functional way to get through and around the base as well, because those are the important pieces. And then from there, it's just the details that you find work best for you. You can kind of just go as crazy or as not as you want at this point. It's kind of your the world is your oyster at this point. I'd say the only thing that's still a bit of a struggle is these corner pieces, but honestly, I think someone could design those as a more interesting thing anyways, because I never really fell in love with those either, but I just never had the time to redesign them all. But other than that, I appreciate everyone hanging out and watching these guides. I really hope that they are helpful. I really, really enjoy helping people build in this game, especially Grounded 2 out now as well. Make sure you check out our live streams. We're live Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays right now, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, streaming Mega Building and Grounded 2. We might revisit some Grounded 1 as we wait for updates for Grounded 2 here and there, depending on how things go, especially because we don't have all these blocks. And I'm hoping to get some more videos out here shortly as well. I have a couple ideas for Grounded 2 videos and some other things, but without further ado, I appreciate everyone watching the video. Hopefully it helps. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more mega builds and designer tips and stuff. And I will catch you on the next one. Peace.